Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the vicinity of two important givings in the life of this nation: the 7th October presidential election and the start of the 2018-2019 academic year. It is the duty of every citizen of this great country to ensure that these two events unfold in the most successful manner. My guest today is the CPDM section president for MESAM 2 in Santa, Mr. FRU Jonathan. I am your humble servant, Ashu Nyenti. I'll be back in a jiffy. Just stay tuned and watch the news as it unraveled from the Unity Palace. The ambience at the Simalen International Airport late afternoon this August 25 is that of a people very much in love with their head of state. And here comes the aeroplane bringing back the presidential couple returning from a private sojourn overseas. After picking their way down the ramp, Paul and Chantal Biya are met and greeted at the foot of the plane by the same battery of senior state dignitaries who had seen them off a fortnight ago, at the head of which is Senate President Marcel Nyat Njifenji. Unlike on departure, this time, one by one, the personalities filed past for a brief airport audience, beginning with Senate President Marcel Nyat Njifenji, Prime Minister Philemon Yang, and then the Secretary General at the Presidency of the Republic, Ferdinand Ngo. The security context sees the Delegate General for National Security, Martin Mbagangele, and the Director General of External Research, Leopold Maxime Eko, taking turns to be with the President. The series rounds off with Jean Kwete, the Secretary General of the Central Committee of the CPDM, the party on whose ticket President Paul Biya is seeking re-election. At the same time, the First Lady shares pleasantries with spouses of her husband's close aides at the adjacent room of the presidential lounge. And within minutes, the presidential couple is ready to meet the warmth of their people, savoring the usual animation from jubilant dance groups and party comrades before the presidential limousine speeds through the streets of the capital city to the glee of Yaoundé inhabitants and other deep-dyed supporters satisfied that the president and his wife have come back home to the Unity Palace, hale and hearty. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you as I introduced this program, our focus today will be on the presidential election of the 7th of October and back to school for the new academic year. And my guest is a section president for the CPDM in MESAM 2 in Santa, Mr. FRU Jonathan. Mr. Section President, it warms my heart to have you as my guest today.
Thank you very much, Ashunenti. It's my pleasure to be on your program this day. I'm privileged.
By the way, you were recently appointed as Secretary General in the very strategic Ministry of Mines, Industries and Technological Development. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great leap forward in my life. I use this opportunity to thank the head of state for thinking of me and pledge my loyalty and my commitment to be able to merit the confidence that has placed in me.
You're not talking of service to the nation.
Yes, to the nation. And I thank all those who have given me support all through my administrative life, my political life. And I think after, when you work so hard and at the end you reap from that work, I think you get some special satisfaction.
That is an indication that in the Biya administration, did not forget those who are the grassroots.
Effectively, if you see the reaction of my well-wishers, my militants, in fact, all my friends. Their reaction was spontaneous. Spontaneous on the field. Exceptionally, we saw how the CPD militants of Santa came out massively to rejoice and thank the president. During the installation, I was happily surprised with the turnout. My friends, my collaborators, all my well-wishers, they came, and we even filled the Congress hall. You imagine. That, I think, is a mark of esteem. I want to thank all those who were there, who came to encourage me, and I think that gives me some warmth in my heart and some motivation to continue working very hard.
I know you just got into that ministry. We're not going to be talking about the mines arm of it. That will be for another day. But let's look at the industrial development part of it. How strategic is that to the economy of this country, especially as Cameroon is looking forward to attaining the status of an emerging country by 2035?
Yes. What I would say is that the head of state, by creating this ministry, Ministry of Mines, Industries, and the Technological Development, took a very important and a very strategic decision, considering the vision he has, the vision of an emerging country, the vision of a developed country. Cameroon is moving on the superhighway of development, of growth. And when we talk about growth, we mean production. We must be able to industrialize. We should be able to transform our local materials. If China is a developed country today, it is because they were able to transform, to produce. If Nigeria is a rich and developed country, if South Africa is developing, it's because of industries. We have a lot of raw materials in our country, a lot of natural resources, both minerals, in agriculture, in animal breeding. We have a lot of resources, and most of these resources have been exported. And when they come back to us, they come very expensive. So why don't we transform them here and then rather export to other countries? I think that's the vision the head of state had for this, by creating this ministry.
That is a vision, but those of you on the ground, at the ministerial level, are you following up on this vision?
Effectively, this vision is being implemented because at the moment when I was being appointed, the minister had gone ahead to put in place the strategic plan for the industrialization of our country. It's an important document that gives a clear roadmap on how our country shall be industrialized. And it gives us all the indicators, identifies all the sectors, maps out all our potential. And we have even several projects which already have been studied with the assistance of PNDP. We have close to 350 projects that are ready, that need just financing. They have been studied and the projects are already mature. So the ministry is working, and we know that in the near future the growth shall come. And this growth shall come with riches, shall come with jobs for our population, for our youths, and so on. So I think the ministry has come just in time, just at the moment when our country needs most to be able to be competitive with other countries. And I think what is going on now, we're sure that that vision which the president has, that of developing this country, that of attaining emergence, it can come through this ministry. And I think it is very important that we continue working to ensure that we attain that vision.
Anyway, we shall have plenty of opportunity to come back to that, on that in greater detail. But as you said, our focus today is about the presidential election and back to school. Now, you come from the Northwest region. What is the situation on the ground right now?
Really, you know, for the year that just ended, some of our children were in school.
Others were not?
Others were not in school. We discovered that mostly in the big cities like Bamenda and Kambe and so on, the children are going to school. In the remote areas, they are not going to school. Mostly because the level of security is not as strong as is in the big towns. The threats and the fact that the level of education of those who are in the villages may not be the same. At one moment, those who have been terrorizing our people, paralyzing our educational system, had given the impression that there will be no school. They gave the impression that there will be no GCE exams. They gave the impression that if they don't go to school, within a few months or whatever, they're going to get independence and they will change the country and bring in a new educational system, and so on and so forth. These are all promises that were made to the population, and initially they thought it was going to be true. But as time goes on, now we're getting to the second and maybe to the third year, they're discovering that none of those promises has materialized. Every year, the GCE is being written, the results have been published, and the results have been recognized, certificates have been recognized.
And the country is strong and united.
The country is strong and united. The independence is not coming. 1st October come and pass, another one follows, our country remains united. So there is some, the population is becoming more conscious of the fact that they have been misled, because when they discover...
They're becoming conscious of the fact that they've been throwing doors into their eyes?
Effectively, because when they even discover that those who are preaching the boycott, mostly from out of the country, we see pictures with their children graduating in very...
Well, living large.
Living well in good hotels. They are on holidays with their parents. They are going to school. They are being awarded diplomas and so on. So the population is discovering that they have been misled. So the situation is gradually changing. I would say, like in my own area, Santa, recently, a few weeks behind, some youths decided to organize holiday classes. And behold that, they had quite a crowd of students who want to catch up. They want to prepare themselves for school, which means that they're being more conscious and they know that they have to stop what is happening and go back to school. They have to lay down their arms. They have to leave the bushes and come back to home to meet their other brothers and go to school. They have to prepare for their future, because if they continue to stay in the house, then those other people who are deceiving them, in the future their children shall come back home with big diplomas and they shall be want to occupy the important positions in the country. They are the ones who shall be the ministers, the director generals and so on, and the engineers and doctors. Then they who didn't go to school will now become the servants. They will become yardmen or drivers, or they will do odd jobs because they didn't go to school. You cannot be able to do a good job if you didn't go to school. Education is fundamental for any...
No, we'll talk about that in some greater detail.
So the situation, as you say,
unravels.
Yes, the situation is gradually coming back. The problem which they may be facing now is that of insecurity. But I think the forces of law and order are doing their best to ensure that they protect the population. Because the kidnappings that are going on, the attacks that are going on, the burning, the destruction, they create some atmosphere of fear in the population. But the fact that they have the security forces always available to intervene when there's a problem, that gives them some assurance. And I think today they're preparing, and it's our hope that they'll be able to go back to school in September.
You in particular, when was the last time you went to the village?
I came back from the village just this weekend, because that is about 3 days ago, because we had a political meeting in Bamenda. The Prime Minister, head of government, who is at the same time the head of the regional permanent delegation in Northwest, did convene a meeting, which is just one of several meetings.
And we shall be coming back to the convening and the whole of that meeting in Bamenda. But let us stay in the realm of education, because today is Monday, and the 2018-2019 academic year will rumble off next Monday. That's the 3rd of September. Now, what measures have you taken to ensure to help, I'm sure the fever should be gathering steam at your level, at the level of your communities. So what is the situation on the ground?
Really, we will not invent anything. All we're doing now is education. Educating the population, both the children who have to go to school and the parents. And at the same time, trying to see how we can do to give them some minimum support.
Is the message sinking? The
message is going through. As I say, if you go and interview or question the people on the field, they will tell you they're tired. The children are tired of staying at home. They are tired of losing their children in a war which they don't know to what direction is going to take them. In fact, they're really, really tired. Even the children are getting really frustrated and wounded. The only problem they have is that of the threats, kidnapping that is going on. But as I say, the population, the fact that they already accept that they should send their children to school is making them become more conscious and following up to ensure that they identify those who want to come and attack them and report them to the forces of law and order. So at the moment, we are educating them. We are trying to see how we can organize programs, some programs towards the start of school to be able to offer some basic materials to our children. We are raising small funds for that. We're trying to see how we can organize some events to reward those who have succeeded in the GC, because there are some of them there who are celebrating.
Yeah, you're talking about organizing. You're talking about organizing. We're just 1 week away. There are many students and pupils who would like to go to school, but their parents do not have the necessary resources, financial and material. And you're talking about organizing 1 week to the start of school. You the elite.
No, this is an operation that has been going on. When I say organizing events to reward or to assist, it's just a form of motivation. It's a form of encouragement. There's no way we can say we'll take over the education of the children.
You can help. Those of you who are enlarged. Those of you who are in important positions can always help the poor ones in the village.
Yes, we help them. We try to give them minimum assistance. And it is more symbolic than thinking that you're going to pay the school fee and buy the books for the children. We make them understand the importance of education. We say, if we have a few exercise books we're going to give to these children, at least the child will know that on the day the schools are opening, I have to go to school, I have at least an exercise book, I have a pen to go and start school. So we're not like saying that we're going to take over the children of our people. We're saying that we're trying to educate them and motivate them, make them feel that education is necessary and that they should be able to take their children to school. And as I said, the message is passing because most of the parents are struggling. They are really struggling in spite of the difficulties. You know, with the ghost towns, with the kidnapping, most of them have lost their businesses. Even those who are doing okadas cannot run them, the shops cannot open. Those who go to farm, they cannot go to their farms and so on. It is really a difficult situation, but we make them understand they have to do everything to let these children go to school.
Oh. Now, you mentioned the case of insecurity in some of the localities. What precautions are you taking to ensure that when students and people should go back to school, they will learn normally in their classes? Any precautions at your level?
You know, the problem of security is really a very difficult problem. At one moment, our people think it's the military or the police or the gendarmes who have to take responsibility for that security. It's true, they are there for that. But it will be difficult to put the military men behind all the population. So the challenge to have security lies even more with the population. Because there are areas in the northwest where the terrorists have not been able to penetrate. Why? Because the population are against them. They stand firm against them. The population decides to follow up their movements and report them. to the forces of law and order who are able to track them and be able to neutralize them. This is what we expect from the population.
So why have the other areas not been able to borrow a leave from these areas you are mentioning?
Some of them came in late. They didn't know they could start early enough. And when you allow them invade that area and occupy it, it becomes a bit more difficult to send them out. But if action is taken early enough, then something can be done. But as I said, it's not late. It's not late because the DO, the military officer, the gendarmerie, the policeman, he needs information. You know, when the terrorists come and attack and maybe kill someone or destroy, and the population allow them, they don't inform the security, it becomes a problem. Because when the military are coming to intervene to protect the population, they're already gone. But it is important that they should be able to preempt. They should be able to know that they are coming and be able to inform the security so that some action to be taken. This is all that can be done because there's no way you can invent an action other than what is going on. The military has to do its work, the population too has to do its work.
Now in the far north, they have, for similar occurrences, they have vigilante groups that help the forces of law and order, that help to maintain peace and serenity in the various localities, communities. Do you have similar arrangements in your own part of the country?
What I must say is that the situation in the far north is a bit different from that in the northwest.
How different?
It's different in the sense that in the far north, the population are faced to an enemy who is coming from outside. And when that enemy is coming, the population unite themselves to track down the enemy. The vigilante groups operate very well in collaboration with the administration, with the forces of law and order. In the northwest, the situation is different because those who are terrorizing the population are part of that population. We've had cases where the son takes the father, kidnaps the father, the parent, and imposes on the parent the payment of some money to be released. The son or the parent. So at one moment you don't know who is the enemy and who is not the enemy. And there it makes it very difficult. I will want to say sometimes you have a vigilante group and sometimes afterward you may hear that a member of that group is attacked somewhere and even killed, which means that you were in a vigilante group having some other person who is working for the enemy in your group. That's what makes the situation in the northwest a bit complex. So it is important. These groups are very necessary. Where these groups function well, we discover that there's a lot of calm. There's a lot of the terrorists are unable to penetrate the areas. But where they are not well organized, it makes it difficult and the people keep suffering. So I think something has to be done because today there is for instance, the emergency aid which is going down to the field. We think that these vigilante groups should be part of it. They should be able to benefit from this aid that the Cameroonians, out of goodwill, have decided to send to help the population of North and Southwest, because they are doing a formidable job on the field, helping to direct the security officers on what course to take to be able to track down those who are terrorizing. This is an important job. These guys have to be taken care of.
So you are saying definitely that as far as you are concerned in the localities that you have visited, places you have been to, the 2018-2019 academic year should be better than it was last year.
We think strongly that things will be better. And they know that it is important for them to come back now and settle down and restart their lives because it's never too late.
I mean, we are appealing to them in this regard.
This is the appeal we make to them, and as I say, the message is passing very well. But they know and believe that the only thing they can do is to fall back and start things all over, send their children to school and try to pick up. Because even the economic loss of this crisis for 2 years, it will take several years for us to catch up.
Tell us about that. How destructive has this been in the economies of these two regions, especially the one that you master more at the Northwest region?
Let me tell you that as we go on the field, most of the people who visit the Northwest end up passing the night in Bafoussam.
Not Bamenda?
Not in Bamenda, out of fear. You can imagine the hotels in Bafoussam, those in Bamenda will remain empty. Those in Bafoussam will be full. It's true the money is in the same country, but the people in the north are suffering. All the businesses are paralyzed because there are most businesses that produce a lot of money and that function mostly at night. You have the snacks, you have nightclubs, you have the women who sell food at night and so on. Most of them don't have jobs again. If you go back to the schools are not functioning. Those who used to sell books in the town, the bookshops have closed down. Those who sell food at the various schools to the school children cannot do that again. So you discover that the whole economy is being paralyzed completely. And this has a very big effect. Even microfinance institutions, we discover that most of the members are gradually removing their funds from the institution because they've lost faith in everything. So the whole economy is moving into a slum. And to take off is going to be very difficult. But whatever be the case, it must start somewhere. We must stop it. Even if the others had whatever reason they came out for, there's no war that you don't sit down to evaluate. I think it is important that today those who were fighting for liberty or anything should sit down and evaluate. They should be able to see how far they've gone, see whether they can adjust their method.
Your own evaluation, what comes out of your own evaluation?
The evaluation is that it's a purposeless fight. You should be able to have a destination. You should be able to have a path which you are following. You cannot be fighting and going without knowing where you're going to. You cannot be fighting without...
In other words, they are moving into cul-de-sac.
Yeah, cul-de-sac, as you say. You cannot fight and you don't see any concrete results coming and you continue fighting. You cannot fight the state. That has not happened anywhere. That you tend to fight the government. The state is very strong. It's not only the case of Cameroon. Any state, to fight the state, you cannot win a state in a war like that. So I think that the evaluation which we do and which I think they should be doing now is such that they should be able to come back, sit down and rethink their positions. Some of our leaders have said they should come out voluntarily and start rebuilding our regions. I think that's just what I have to do. It's a battle which they cannot win, and they will never win it. Rather, they will cause us to lose our people. Our children are dying, and most of them, if you go to the field, you will discover that those who are involved, their ages range between 14 years and 20 years. These are children who are going to school. They've lost their education.
The vital forces of the nation.
They are completely lost. Now they are given local arms, then guns, cutlasses, knives, and pushed to go and face the military.
In other words, you are saying it's a lost battle.
It's a lost battle. And they cannot face the military. You cannot use a then gun to face a military officer who is trained and who has an automatic rifle. You cannot win a war against that.
Okay, we're going to take our first pause on this program that will enable us to transition to our next port of concern. It is now clear to everybody there will be 9 candidates in the October 7th presidential election for 1 seat of president. Many of the candidates whose documents were rejected by the Electoral Board of Elections Cameroon tried by other means to be included among those to vie for the top job in Cameroon at the Constitutional Council. At the same time, Elecam is trying to put its act together to get ready for the final stretch. As you tell us, Quinta Rita Edang.
Candidates vying for the post of the President of the Republic, whose files are rejected by the Electoral Board of Elecam, have a right to table petitions before the Constitutional Council. This is in accordance with Section 131 of the Electoral Code, which states that, in case of objections or petitions relating to the rejection or acceptance of candidacies, as well as those relating to the color, initial, or emblem chosen by a candidate, The Constitutional Council before which the matter is brought shall rule within no more than 10 days of the filing of the petitions. In all, 12 petitions were forwarded to this new arm of the judiciary. Candidates like Vincent Sosten Fuda Esomba, Reverend Gaban Mihanda Rigobert, an independent candidate, Abubakar Kalmadin, who failed to deposit his file at Ilekam, Ze Amve Genevieve, the only female candidate who deposited a petition, and Ngolo Valentine, simply wanted their files to be re-examined and validated, despite the absence of some major documents, such as the receipts for the deposit of 30 million francs and 300 signatures from across the country. In addition to the request for the validation of their candidatures, Kum Ane Ihims of the Yaoundé Bilingual Political Party, Beten Kisab of the Social Justice Party, and Jomo Leopold Steve called for the disqualification of the CPDM hopeful Paul Biya for irregularities. Their accusations against the CPDM candidate were considered baseless and thrown out by the council as they had no proof.
We are very satisfied by the decision of Constitutional Council.
The president of Union pour la Fraternité, Olivier Billet, pleaded for the council to authorize him pay the deposit to complete his file for the raise to the Unity Palace, but did not succeed.
I'm still working on the political scene, and finally, the intervention I'm also calling for is that of God.
A petition received but not scrutinized by the council was that tabled by Beten Kisop, requesting the cancellation of the decree convening the electorate. At the end of the public hearings, all 11 petitions were rejected. Given that the rulings of the Constitutional Council are final, the October 7th presidential election shall feature the 9 candidates initially declared eligible. Officials of the Elections Management Body, ELECAM, are now busy cleaning up the electoral rolls. This is within the confines of Section 76 sub 3 of the Electoral Code, which stipulates that the Commission shall expunge from the register the names of deceased persons, those ordered to be struck off by the competent authority, and anyone who no longer meet the conditions laid down by law. Those registered wrongfully, as well as cases of multiple registration, shall also be sorted out.
We will have between 25 and 30,000 polling stations for the 6.5 or 6.7 million voters. When the final list of voters will be drawn up, each voter will be assigned to a polling station, and the Director General of Elections will sign a decision creating the polling stations. These have to be made public 8 days before voting day.
In accordance with Article 96 of the Electoral Code, the Director General of Elections has the duty to establish the list of polling stations.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you are just joining us, you are watching Inside the Presidency, the most authoritative media platform on presidential actions and prescriptions on CRTV premium television. And my guest is Mr. Fu Jonathan, Section President of the CPDM for Menzam 2 in Santa. Mr. Section President, there seems to be no respite for you politicians nowadays. You are up and everywhere.
Yes, we're preparing for the upcoming presidential election. It's the most important election that a country can talk about. And we have our candidate who is running for this election, President Paul Biya. And we have to work very hard to ensure that he wins the election, and not just an ordinary win, but wins with
a reasonable
margin. We are very confident because we prepared. We didn't start preparation now. We know there are candidates we're discovering for a presidential election when they announce the election. But we know that our candidate has been on for the past 7 years. Since the last election, he has been working. His party is on the field on a permanent basis.
Last week, you of the Northwest CPDM were on the ground to organize a rally.
We were on the ground to sharpen our
How did it go?
It went very well. Our regional boss, the Prime Minister Philemon Yang, put us together, all the elite, the section presidents, the mayors, parliamentarians, were all together to reflect and fine-tune our strategy. I would say we are virtually set.
So it was fine. If you just rewind, sometime last year, a similar rally was organized under very acrimonious circumstances, and this year, no problem, easygoing. What has changed since then?
No, nothing much has changed. What has changed is that the population is becoming more conscious. They know that there's no reason to go and disturb a political party that is holding its rally. We're in a democratic country, in a state of law. You can't go and obstruct someone from holding his rally. And maybe initially the population thought they were fighting a just cause, that there was something going to reap from it, but when they discover that they're just exposing their children to be killed for nothing, I think they don't have time for it. Now they're more focused on the elections.
So what was the program of the candidate?
Our candidate has a political program.
Which is?
A political program. First of all, we're talking of, I may not be able to give you everything, I can give you headlines. We're talking of our democracy. We're in a democratic country. Our country is democratic, and our democratic process has been done and piloted by our candidate. We're talking of an environment where there are public liberties. We're talking of an environment where people can express themselves freely, politically. We're talking of a country where our candidate is putting emphasis on decentralization, trying to decentralize, because that is the cry of all Cameroonians, trying to take power down to the grassroots. We're talking of an economic program. Our candidate has a vision, because any candidate going for an election should tell us, where are you going to? Our candidate says he's taking Cameroon to emergence, and to get to emergence, there's a path that you have to follow. There's a strategic plan to develop our country through energy, through infrastructure, through agriculture, through education, through health, all this put together in the plan of our candidate. Our candidate has qualities which transcend our national territories. You know, he's respected, President Paul Biya respected at the international community. He's just like a consultant to most of the African leaders, even world leaders today. So we think our candidate is prepared, and his political party has covered the national territory. We have the CPDM in all the subdivisions in this country, and the party is vibrating in all the subdivisions. So we cannot have any fear or have any surprise for win if we are facing candidates who came in today who have no program. The population of Cameroon is able to judge, and they know that that is the right candidate. So as we go to the field, we are very set. The Prime Minister did put us together to fine-tune our strategy. We did work.
That was a kind of testing the waters before the grand finale, the home stretch.
We did work well to register our militants into electoral registers. A good number of them were registered. Now we are working out strategies to get them obtain their voters' cards.
And those militants who have been displaced, how do you intend to get them into action
really,
when the time comes?
This is our
Have you been thinking about that?
We're thinking about it, and I think the government is thinking about it. The Minister of Territorial Administration is working on that. We think ELECAM is working on that. It is important that everyone who registers should be able to vote. If the security situation in our regions improve, naturally, these people, they should be able to move back and vote where they did register.
So you're going to organize rallies, public rallies like before?
Well, it depends on the security situation. But what you should understand is that we are going, we're not starting our campaigns now. We have been campaigning for the past 7 years. Our militants know what we are capable of. So whether there are rallies When there are no rallies, our militants are prepared to vote. If we discover that rallies will expose our candidates or our militants to aggression from the terrorists, then we shall be able to use another method to campaign.
So how crucial is this election to the Northwest?
It is a very crucial election to the Northwest because if we look at the context, the Northwest is going through a very difficult moment. And the Northwest is a region that was respected in this country for their hospitality, for their hard work, for their intelligence. Northwest is a region where virtually all Cameroonians decided to send their children to school in Northwest because of the respect of the educational style of the
quality of education.
Quality of education in Northwest. But now we're virtually losing this great potential because if the Northwesterners do say that if others are talking of seaports, talking of forest, talking of coffee or cocoa, Northwest talk of education. That is our own industry. We're gradually losing that industry, and that will be very, very catastrophic for the Northwest region. That's why we need to ensure that there's peace. We need to vote a candidate who has that interest to protect that region, because we know that President Paul Biya has a special love for Northwest. If you discover that most of his major events have been taking place in Northwest, he launches party in Northwest, he visits the Northwest regularly, and so on. The Prime Minister from Northwest, I think the Northwest has every reason to vote, to go and vote and ensure that there's peace so that we'll be able to get back that privileged position that we had in our country.
Jonathan, you are one of the few persons from your own part of the country who talks to the population about important national issues as you are doing. Not everybody has the courage to do that. Whereas talking to the population is part of the healing process. It's a therapy.
Yes. It's the therapy which we must have to use to heal. We must have to use to repair the damage that has been done.
Like what you are doing, talking to the public now.
Yes, talking to the public, because sometimes when you talk, you relieve yourself some pain. If you have a problem and you can't express it, sometimes you may die with that problem. It may cause you some illness. So we talk to the public, and we talk because you're saying the things you know and you're saying the things you're convinced about. I don't know how I can go and convince my people to take another course other than follow President Paul Biya, whom I've seen at work. I've seen the results he has produced. I've seen what he has done for our country and for our region. Then I should tell my people to go on that path. I will not let my people go behind an adventurer, somebody who has no experience, somebody who has never managed any crisis. Like we're in crisis, we need somebody who has managed crisis. This is not the first crisis President Paul Biya has managed. We had so many of them. We need somebody like him to manage situations like this one. We say this because we know and we are convinced about it. If you are not convinced, you will not be able to talk about something. So I think this talking is important, and our people are doing it. Our Prime Minister, particularly, he talks. He teaches the people. He educates them. He talks and talks. And the people are listening to him, and they are understanding what he is saying. So we must have to talk to our people. We have to educate them, because that is all we can do now, educate our population. We cannot force anyone. We cannot use the military with there to protect them, but they can't use force on them. So we have to talk more to the people and ensure that they understand what is going on and know the right path to take.
Gentlemen, just take the glass of water. Meanwhile, there is somebody who has contributed enormously to preserving the territorial integrity of Cameroon through his good offices and mediation efforts. I'm talking about Ghanaian-born Kofi Annan, who passed away recently. The Dekuyus is profiled here by Charles Ebune.
This was the most traveled Secretary General of the United Nations to Cameroon. Kofi Annan decided to make Cameroon one of his favorite destinations, and the reason is simple.
You can remember the circumstances. At that time, the whole African continent was, pushing for a re-election of Boutros Ghali. They were really, sort of solidarity, pushing that Boutros Ghali should be elected for a second term. But as you all remember, the USA was completely against that re-election. So what President Biya did was to write to his colleagues, the African president, asking them to support, instead of insisting that Boutros Ghali would be re-elected, they should ensure a second term for the African continent. And then he wrote to his colleagues asking them rather to support Kofi Annan. And I guess that Kofi Annan himself didn't forget it.
The decision to make Kofi Annan the African decision, the Secretary General of the United Nations, was made here in Yaoundé, Cameroon, when President Paul Biya hosted one of the gatherings of the Organization of African Unity back in 1996.
It was particularly devoted in the resolution of the Bakassi crisis. And I know for the best of my knowledge, he was acting not only in that capacity, but I guess it was also driven with the spirit of gratitude, knowing the particular role President Biya played in his election.
Challenged by threats to its existence, Kofi Annan was one of the defenders of the sovereignty of Cameroon being kept intact.
Mr. Kofi Annan opted to not only bring his mind and body to bear on that conflict between Cameroon and Nigeria, but he even brought on his good offices, the good offices of the UN, to the extent that it was like a personal crusade for him. It was like an assignment of the United Nations to get that conflict solved.
The personal involvement of Secretary General Kofi Annan to the peaceful resolution of the Bakassi border difference between Cameroon and Nigeria is an enough testimony to that.
The last visit he paid to Cameroon, he insisted on that indivisibility of our country. And as if he was advising all Cameroonians, he was saying Cameroonians should put everything to remain united and in peace.
The Cameroonian Academy also awarded Kofi Annan an honoris causa for his contribution to humanity. And back in 2010, he was here to participate in the Africa 21 Summit called by President Paul Biya to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Cameroon's independence and to see how peaceful resolution of conflicts in Africa can be exemplified by the examples of Cameroon and Nigeria.
The United Nations is at ease with a united Cameroon. The United Nations is proud of a united Cameroon. The United Nations looks forward to and supports peace in Cameroon, and the United Nations wants Cameroonians to live in peace, to work for peace, and to live with one another in their diversity, in peace and in unity. Anybody doing the contrary, for whatever reason, is going against the Charter and the values of the United Nations. And as you know, Mr. Kofi Annan will go down as Mr. United Nations.
Early 2000, Kofi Annan was in Cameroon and was met by a group of Cameroonians who, among other things, proposed Cameroon should be split. The man who spent 44 out of his 80 years on earth opposed the move.
In all freedom, Mr. Kofi Annan believed that Cameroon's unity, the nation of Cameroon, that a territory that was once the people of the United Nations, Cameroon is one of the most successful and the best examples that the United Nations can show for. as a victory and success of the United Nations. And therefore, tearing down the unity of Cameroon, tearing down the nation of Cameroon will be tantamount and is tantamount to tearing down the United Nations.
The late Secretary General, whom President Paul Biya, through a tweet, paid tribute, was one of the believers of the indivisibility of Cameroon in the concert of nations. The troubles that Cameroon face even today could be resolved within a constitutional framework without tearing Cameroon peace crusader Kofi Annan believed. And so if someone tells you Kofi Annan, as a Secretary General of the United Nations or as an individual, backed their separatist ideas in Cameroon, that is simply fake news based on these accounts.
Thank you very much, Charles. Mr. Fu Jonathan, what do you remember of Kofi Annan?
Yes, we know Kofi Annan as an emblematic figure. He's a shrewd politician who has left his mark not only in his country, or in Africa, on the continent, but the world over, by virtue of the important positions he held at the level of the United Nations. And we know that most Cameroonians will live to remember him because of the role he played in the resolution of the conflict between Nigeria and Cameroon concerning the Bakassi Peninsula. I think it is a rare case of international politics, international resolution of conflicts, the International Court of Justice that have gone on smoothly and ended up with both parties being satisfied. In fact, it is a reference in the world today. So I and most Cameroonians will live to remember Kofi Annan for that great job he did for our country. I remember his meetings with President Paul Biya and so on. The meetings he had with President Paul Biya, President Obasanjo, the Green Tree Accord, and so on. Those are all measures he took, and in a peaceful way, an African conflict is resolved. I think it is a reference in African history and African diplomacy. It is something which other countries would like to copy. So he played that important role, and today he's no more. I think we keep remembering him for that. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Okay. I appreciate your insight. Thank you very much.